Thank you for joining us today. Let's jump in. So you have had a very impressive journey from MIT to Cola to OpenDALL, now OpenAI. And what attracted you to OpenAI in its early days? If you had joined like after ChatGPT, I wouldn't ask this question.
Yeah, so I'd actually always kind of stayed close to the AI space. My background's generally in like machine learning. I wasn't doing anything as crazy as the LLMs and the scale that we're at right now, but I generally kind of been following this space, and so I'd heard of OpenAI for a while. My first job out of college was also at Quora, and a lot of my coworkers there actually were even earlier than I was at OpenAI. They joined pretty early. But I remember the main thing for me, so I was thinking about what was next for me in the summer of 2022. And if you remember back then, the big thing was actually the image generation model. So DALL-E 2 had come out, and it was, at the time, actually the most mind-blowing model in the world. I remember I had early access to it, and I just asked it to draw a very simple picture of a duck. And I was like, there's no way this thing is going to render an image of a duck, and it did that. And it's funny because nowadays it's like the simplest thing for these image models to do, but at the time it was completely mind-blowing. And so for me, it was kind of like the advent of DALL-E 2 and kind of really seeing that these AI systems had reached some threshold of understanding that would make them actually very useful in the world. And so based off of that, I basically was like, okay, there's clearly something happening in this AI at scale field, and so I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to learn more about it, and so that's what kind of put me on the path towards OpenAI.
Great, that was a great move, and that worked out very well for you. And you could be a great investor in the future.
Maybe.
So what does your role as a head of engineering entail?
Yeah, so right now I lead the engineering for what we call the OpenAI platform. So the biggest, there are a number of products kind of in our surface area right now. The biggest of which obviously is the OpenAI API, which at this point is one of the largest business lines that we have. But beyond even the API itself, we also think about anything that's really enterprise or like B2B oriented software and system that we sell to different companies and different organizations. Our work on OpenAI for governments fall into this as well. We sell software to the Department of Defense and to various research labs, as well as our work for OpenAI for countries, which governments and different countries are basically other types of very specific and bespoke enterprises as well. So that's where my time goes. But honestly, my day-to-day typically just involves a lot of time, one, thinking about our API and how we can improve it, and two, meeting with people who build on top of our models and build on top of our APIs. One of the best parts of my job is actually things like this, where I get to talk to founders, I get to talk to companies building on our APIs. They get to sometimes complain to me about what we could do better, and I'm usually able to bring that back to the team. So honestly, a lot of my day-to-day nowadays is actually just talking to customers and talking to people building on our API.
Got it. That's lots of responsibilities. And so my next question is, OpenAI API has and models have evolved over time since its first release of GPT-3 now to very powerful models like GPT-5. And you also added lots of new capabilities over time and at a very rapid pace. And I noticed that 2 days ago, you just made available GPT-5 codecs via API. So that's very impressive. So how have OpenAI's models and the API platform evolved, and what are the biggest challenges to scaling it?
Yeah, so I view those as kind of two separate questions, so I'll take them one at a time, which is one of like how the models and how our platform has evolved over time. We actually talk about this a lot internally. The way I kind of frame it to our team is over time there have been successive, I'd say like model breakthroughs that have resulted in a meaningful step change in model capabilities. And the way that I conceptualize it is each kind of change in capability has led to this like exponentially larger market or like a TAM of what is possible with these models. So the first one in my mind actually was just original GPT-3. This was actually the state of the API when I joined the company. And at the time, it actually wasn't that useful. It was like the biggest users on our API was copywriting companies like Copy AI, Jasper, were kind of the biggest things. And then I viewed GPT 3.5 and 4 as one, other inflection point, and that actually opened it up to a whole nother, exponentially larger market for us, which basically was the big post-ChatGPT Cambrian explosion with like, Perplexity is doing things, Snapchat, like all of the different like chat style use cases kind of came on. And then after that, I actually, we view the next big step change as the reasoning paradigm. So that started with O1 preview late last year. I think it's only been a year. Yeah, so like late last year. But the main thing that the reasoning paradigm actually unlocked is long-term agentic behavior. And that is another, like step function or like another exponential increase in the size of the market. And we're really seeing this play out with the coding agents. We're starting to see it play out with other types of agents, support agents, sales agents as well. But the ability for the model to start thinking over longer periods of time really unlocked a larger use case for us. And so that's kind of how I contextualize the increase in the model capabilities. And yeah, you can also layer on multimodal as well. Like the voice stuff was just kind of came along the ride with some of these improvements, and obviously that expands the group. But the current state is very interesting because it's basically starting to reach into all different types of workflows, knowledge workflows. So anyways, that's the first question. Second question, which is much more in the weeds on like how do we scale? It's a kind of a boring answer because the honest answer is since ChatGPT launched, we've seen obviously unprecedented growth. The biggest challenges on scaling was literally everything, because literally everything broke when we were scaling. When you grow at like 10x, when you grow an order of magnitude just in a period of months, and then it happens again, everything just completely breaks. We've had to like, we did all the classic like startup things where we were using on like a single Postgres instance, or our data, our databases needed to be changed. Our entire caching layer using Redis was like not going to scale, so we had to redo all of those. Almost all of the third-party vendors that we used, we very quickly became their largest customers, and so that had its own scaling challenges as well. And so I could obviously talk about all the war stories there for a while, but it's actually kind of a boring answer because literally everything that we used kind of broke because of how quickly we were growing, and it was only from the heroics of the team that we were able to slightly pull through, and I think we're past most of it now.
Yeah, that's really impressive because I have been working on engineering for a while, and lots of challenges in scaling it. And on the other hand, you also need to keep the pace. Like I introduced so many new features, and just in last like 6 months. So that's really impressive. So the reaction to GPT-5 launch was quite mixed, and the initial excitement was quickly taken away by some disappointments. And could you share some reflections on this launch?
Yeah, we've obviously talked about this a lot internally. I actually think the tide has like kind of turned again, like in the last, I don't know if everyone here is terminally online, but I am. And yeah, there was definitely like a lot of hype built right at the launch, then a bunch of disappointment. And now it feels like the tide's like turning again, so like people are kind of getting more excited about it. We're definitely seeing this on the API side, where the amount of usage that people are moving over to GPT-5 is mind-blowing. Yeah, a lot of reflections here. So one thing that we've talked about is I think there were a bunch of trade-offs that we made with GPT-5. One of the biggest trade-offs was we really pushed the like thinking tokens and the ability for the model to think and reach like frontier levels of results from thinking for a very long time. We really pushed that to the extreme, and I thought that was good. It like really helped with the eval numbers look really great for that. GPT-5 thinking high ends up being probably the best coding model in the world. But it was a trade-off, and I think that was a trade-off that we learned a lot about, because the biggest complaint we actually heard from customers was that it was very slow. And it wasn't that like we were running our model slow. We obviously look at like how fast each token comes out. That was actually really fast. We over-provisioned it. But the model itself would just think for a very long time. And so that like latency trade-off of you can actually make it think for longer and get really great results. This is great for like less latency sensitive use cases, but a lot of customers actually do care about latency and how fast things are. That was a good learning for us, and that's actually going to be a learning we're going to be baking into the next version of GPT-5 that we're obviously working on as well, where we wanted to think for long time on really hard questions and get really good results there. But we also wanted to think pretty quickly for easier questions. And the second learning that we're actually going to take to heart for our next releases too is, I think one thing we could have done better this time was one, we put the model out into the API and didn't really tell people how to use it in the API. And then we also put it in ChatGPT, which was not a product surface that really allowed you to deeply understand how good this model is. ChatGPT is like a chat-based product. And so I think the learning here was next time we do a big model launch like this, I think we're going to pair the API model launch with an actual first-party product that really showcases the capabilities of the model that we released. So the miss here for us, which I think we're going to do next time, is I think if we had launched it in Codex and slightly updated the Codex product to highlight, what you can actually do with this long, like high latency, super powerful GPT-5 model, I think it would have showcased the power of GPT-5 a bit more. And we're saying this because I think part of the tide that has changed recently is people using our Codex coding product with GPT-5, and it works really well in that context. But unfortunately, with ChatGPT, it was like kind of hard for people to really see how good this model actually could get at the high reasoning levels. And so the learning here is I think next time we launch a big model update, we'll likely be pairing the raw API launch with an actual product that will highlight the capabilities of the model more.
Got it. Thank you for sharing the reflection. Yeah. So your work on API has catalyzed a very vibrant ecosystem of developers. And you also serve as an advisor in the startup community. So you have a unique vantage point to see how accessible models are empowering innovations. So what exciting and unexpected use cases have you seen emerged from the developer ecosystem?
Yeah, so unexpected is kind of a funny way of phrasing it because at this point, I feel like any enterprise or like B2B use case built on our API is like not unexpected anymore. It's like clear that these models and AI in general has such a clear like path to impact for work and how work is done. I will say one thing that has surprised me is just how broad that set can be. Maybe it's just I didn't really understand how broad like B2B and enterprise actually could be. But like the fact that it's being used across so many different industries in ways that are super deep has been pretty unexpected to me. And so the fact that it's being used in like medicine and law and like, but like even within medicine, like can be used for like insurance coding and also medical front office routing, as well as like helping a doctor. Like just how broad and deep it has been able to go on the enterprise side has been pretty unexpected for me. But to answer like the core of your question, the most unexpected for me has been the consumer use cases. So there are a lot of startups obviously exploring enterprise, but I've been surprised at how interesting and unique some of the consumer use cases have been. The one that is, this is like very different than I think everything else we've talked about so far. But the one consumer use case that I think is really interesting is there's a growing group of startups using our API to build toys for kids. Which I think is really interesting. I actually have one at home for my 2-year-old, but like a little stuffed animal that connects to our API and our voice API and will like talk to kids. And it's like, my kid loves it. It's like the best thing ever. I can like throw the toy at him and he'll be like engaged for like 15 minutes. But I'd never really thought about, you think about the AGI in the sky, you never really think about it in the form of, a stuffed animal for a 2-year-old. But it's actually been really fantastic. It's like taught him to say words, it's like taught him concepts. It's always on, it's always enthusiastic, which I'm not always. And so that use case I think was very unexpected to me. And I actually think there's like more to go there. It's like more depth to go there and we're only just scratching the surface.
That's very interesting. So I'm also a heavy user of ChatGPT. And I also try to use your API to build simple applications. I know there are some differences. And for example, it's hard to build another chatbot which is as good as ChatGPT. So how does the OpenAI balance building your own first-party applications like ChatGPT with enabling third-party developers to build their applications and sometimes compete against your first party?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot internally. The general principle that we follow, that I actually think we've done a pretty good job of doing here, is basically anything that ends up being put in our in ChatGPT as our first-party product eventually makes its way into our API. It just ends up being, a little bit of a delay, and there are a number of reasons for this. One of them is honestly like testing and like safety concerns on our own end. Like, we have a lot more control with our models when we put it into ChatGPT, and so we're able to kind of iterate and see what works and what doesn't work before bringing it to the API, which is a much more powerful. You can programmatically hit it. The rate limits are much higher. So there's something there. I think Codex is a good example of this, the GPT-5 Codex model. We actually, launched it in Codex, I think a week before we ended up bringing it to the API just 2 days ago. So there is like, we do think it's very important that we maintain this kind of like platform neutrality and platform parity between the two offerings. When we can, actually, we try our hardest to actually launch models at the same time. So that's what happened with GPT-5. But when that doesn't happen, we think it's important that we bring it into the API with some delay. The other thing I'd say too is we're starting to reach a point in, I think, the AI development cycle where we've realized that the use cases for these models are starting to diverge quite a bit between the consumer use cases and what many people build on our API, so like enterprise or B2B use cases. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we actually end up having separate models, obviously based off the same base model, but separate models between ChatGPT and API, but the API model just being a little bit more tailored towards the enterprise or the B2B use cases. A good example of this actually is our real-time models. So the speech-to-speech models, if you're on ChatGPT and you open like advanced voice mode, you're talking to a speech-to-speech model. The use cases and the things that make the model really good for ChatGPT actually tend to be quite different than what people want to use when they're building on our API. So for example, in ChatGPT, you want the model to sound very friendly, and you want it to like be good at small talk and things like that. You want it to be funny even. But if you look at our API, what everyone's trying to do with voice models nowadays, there's obviously some people doing consumer, but the vast majority of people are trying to do like support or like sales, like very like business process specific things. And in that case, it's not as important for the model to be funny or be good at small talk. It's really important for the model to follow instructions really well and not accidentally refund someone like 10x what the thing was. Or like very boring things, like it needs to be really good at like number transcription. Like if you're doing a support call and you give it an ID number, it needs to really understand that really well. And so I do think we're going to start reaching a point where the use cases might diverge quite a bit, and the models might switch, but the base capability powering both of them will still stay the same.
Got it. So you have been advising AI startups. So what are the common patterns you have seen in startups that successfully leveraging OpenAI API?
Yeah, so the one thing that I share a lot here is I think the most successful startups, and you can actually see this, I think if you just look at the highest market cap startups nowadays, they really, the way I describe it is they really swim with the current, and they're building products for where these models are going versus what they're able to do today. And so what I mean by that is a lot of the most successful startups build products that really push our models to the limit, and honestly push it so far to the limit that maybe parts of the product that they're building don't actually work yet. So the folks at Cursor who use our models quite a bit are a good example of this. They had always been thinking about this like long-lived agent thing. They wanted this like they wanted more than just an IDE here, and they were always giving us feedback. They were like GPT-4 is still not good enough at this. GPT like 4.1 still not good at this. GPT-5 is like getting there, but like there's still all these things that are not good enough. And the reason why I think that's really helpful and why the most successful startups have this pattern is because when you build in this way, you end up taking advantage of the capabilities improvement trend. And so what I mean by that is every time we end up, for startups like this, every time we launch a new model, so like the next GPT-5, GPT 5.5, 6, or even like competitor models that push the frontier forward, you just get free like benefit as a startup because you've positioned your product and you've built with the future in mind. Versus there are other startups that are like really targeting something that maybe even the earlier models could do, or you're building in a way that's kind of like swimming upstream and you're not able to capitalize or benefit from the improvements in the models. That just kind of like limits your upside a little bit more. And so, yeah, so basically skating to where the puck is moving instead of where it is, and also building products in a way that allows you to take advantage of the next step function model increase is one thing that I've seen in common from successful startups.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. So let's switch gears a little bit and to talk about the enterprise adoption and the impact. And the audience here also includes many enterprise leaders who are interested in learning the insights into how larger organizations are embracing OpenAI platform and what are the common patterns of successful adoption and pitfalls to avoid. So could you share what are the major significant ways enterprise are leveraging OpenAI API?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, at least on the enterprise side, the story ends up becoming more than just the API. So the API, I actually view it as we really have like three main products that exist for the enterprise today. We have the API, which obviously I spend a lot of time on, which is our like lowest level thing. You can build, if you have teams of engineers in your company, you're able to leverage this and build custom applications. Gives you the most flexibility. But we actually have two other products which are completely taking off within enterprises as well. We have ChatGPT Enterprise, which is just the enterprise grade version, ready version of ChatGPT, which we've seen leveraged across wall to wall in many of the Fortune 500 companies. Another one is Codex, which is just a coding agent that engineers can kind of pick up and use themselves. And so those are kind of like the main products that I see. But the way in which it ends up being leveraged, I'd say, is mostly twofold. One is using ChatGPT Enterprise and Codex to make employees much more productive themselves. So it's more like internal productivity and like supercharging internal use cases, something that we see a lot. You can also use the API for this if you build stuff in-house. And then the second thing that is really interesting is really transforming how the business interacts with their customers, how they do business. And I know enterprises are more conservative around this. Some of them have gone like pretty extreme, like Klarna is a good example that is like trying to end-to-end automate all of their support and all of their external use cases. But the more conservative one that we've seen across industries is support is really popular right now, as well as sales, outbound sales, using our API, building solutions that allow one support agent to manage 10 or 20 different one human support agent managing 10 to 20 AI support agents in almost like a managerial type view is something that we've seen as well.
Got it. So I read the MIT's recent report on return on investment on AI investment. They found 95% of Gen AI projects fail to deliver any measurable ROI. And despite like $30 to $40 billion investment across US businesses. So what do you think of this report? And do you agree with their findings?
Yeah, so I haven't read the full report, but it's a very clickbaity title, so I'm not surprised that it made headlines. I don't know, like, my sense is I would not be surprised if this is actually the case as a snapshot of deployment right now. I don't think this means that the potential of this can't be really large, but at this point I have noticed a lot of pitfalls that my hunch is this like 95% of use cases that have not gotten the ROI that you want likely fall into these pitfalls, and they tend to fall into one of two categories. One is you need a combination of top-down buy-in and bottoms-up buy-in to really deploy AI within your organization, especially if you're a larger one. And what I've seen a lot of enterprises do is you only have the top-down buy-in. And so it's like the boardroom pressures, like talk to the CEO and the exec team, and it's like, what is your AI strategy? It's like, we're gonna do AI. And then it's just like this top-down mandate to the team. And then if you look at if you talk to any of the employees, they're like, I don't know what this means. Like, am I supposed to use ChatGPT? How do I use it in my day-to-day? So just having this top-down buy-in is not enough. Oftentimes you need this technology is like so workflow specific and so specific to things that individual employees do in their day-to-day, that you really need the bottoms-up buy-in and people like champions within your organization, in addition to the top-down buy-in. And so I think that's been one big pitfall that I've seen, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the 90% has fallen into this. The second pitfall is this is also technology. This is true for all software, right? But it's technology that doesn't work just in a vacuum, and you oftentimes need to invest quite a bit as an organization, especially if you're a big enterprise. You need to invest a lot in kind of like the infrastructure and the platform layer for you to deploy AI. Similar to how you can't just top down it, you can't just like say, here's an AI, like it should like go do useful stuff in my company. Oftentimes you need to build often just like a data platform or a way to connect tools and use cases and integrate your company into the AI systems that you're purchasing so that it can actually add value. And I've seen a lot of pitfalls where people just buy, just the API or just ChatGPT Enterprise, and they expect it to immediately be valuable, but they haven't done the hard work of actually making their enterprise AI ready and building this platform layer. Versus the companies that I've seen really thrive here, they've already, spent like maybe even a year, 6 to 12 months, laying out and building this like AI data platform layer that really helps the model get, plug in and interact with the rest of the organization in a way that makes it do useful things.
Got it. So for an enterprise who just start the AI journey, you would give the same advice to them?
Yeah, I would say one, make sure that your data and your organization is structured in a way that the AI can actually interact and do useful things in it. Usually, data within an organization or tools or different systems are very messy, and it needs to be structured in a way that the AI is useful. So that's the one advice. And then the other one I'd say is make sure you have bottoms-up buy-in from your organization and champions at the employee level instead of it just being a top-down exec mandate.
Got it. So as the OpenAI's APIs is deeply embedded in many applications, which are becoming increasingly more autonomous. So it's very critical to ensure that your API is used responsibly. So how do you ensure that your API is used by developers responsibly?
Yeah, so there is a whole bunch of systems in play here that I probably don't have time to explain through everything, but I'd say there are like two large categories. One of them is a bunch of work that goes into the model development itself. Actually, I'd say there are maybe three categories. One is there's a lot of work that goes into the model development itself. I think the previous panel talked about red teaming, and we spend a bunch of, honestly, money, time, cycles, making sure that the models that we put out are safe and robust. We obviously can't be 100%, happy, we can't get to 100% coverage, but the models have gotten way more robust, way better with hallucinations, things like that, due to the hard work of this. So there's a bunch of like pre-launch work with the model that we do. Also with like ChatGPT with our API, there's also like post-launch and usage monitoring that we do on an asynchronous basis. If you are not a ZDR-based customer on our API, we'll monitor and check if there's something bad happening either on behalf of your users or if API developers are doing this, and we'll give people visibility into what's happening there. And then the third one is my team actually thinks a lot about what tools we can provide to developers and enterprises who are building on our API to help them manage the safety risks and usage risks that might come with using this technology. Things like Guardrails with our agents SDK. A bunch of our evals product now actually allows you to very quickly evaluate the models for safety risks. And one thing we want to do is actually provide these like preset safety evals for you to just like run based off of your use cases, see if things get jailbroken. So there's like a tool story here as well, which my team is still thinking about, and I think we're still pretty early here, that we want to provide people as well. Got it.
Yeah, so in some cases that you have guardrails in place, but developers or users, even end users, manage to kind of bypass your guardrails. So that's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah, we've actually seen that a good number of times where it is not like the developer who's building on our API doing unsafe things. It is their end user who is trying to kind of abuse their relationship with us to try and do something not safe around the API.
Got it. So we are close to the end. I ask a couple more questions. So What are the upcoming breakthroughs are you mostly excited about?
Yeah, so I think there's, I'd say like there are two categories. One is continuing pushing the reasoning paradigm. I think there's a really cool chart that I think has been shared on Twitter that just shows the time length of the types of tasks that these models can do. And you're kind of seeing it increase exponentially. And so seeing that really increase, I think is something that gets me really excited. Mostly because we've seen this with GPT-5. It's like as the model thinks for longer and longer, it can really get like really good at coding and different agentic tasks. And so continuing to push that curve up, I think is something that I'm really excited about, because what, like if the model can think for like 30 minutes and one shot a web application, like what could this thing do if it could think for like 2 hours or like a day or a week? That's like even hard for me to wrap my mind around. And so really excited about that, because that's also the exponentially larger market that kind of opens up for these cases of AI, like I mentioned earlier. And so that's one that I'm really excited about. The second one is I still feel like there's more room for breakthroughs in the multimodal space, especially with video generation and especially with voice. Even right now, one thing that I don't love is our real-time models, the speech-to-speech models that are kind of the hot new speech-to-speech technology today are really fast, but it still doesn't feel like you're talking to a person, because it's still this turn-based thing where you like stream audio bits in to the model, then you gotta wait for the audio bits to come back. And it's like, that's not how you really talk to a person. When you talk to a person, it's really like, you can interrupt them, you can like kind of, you can have this back and forth with them. And so I feel like there's still some part of the voice story that's still not fully baked here. It's obviously very useful as it is today, but I think for it to be like truly feel like a human-like experience, we'll need to figure that out as well.
Great. Can we expect some breakthroughs in GPT-6?
I can't comment on GPT-6, but also if you look at the paradigm, it'll be 5.5 first, right? Okay. And then 6. But even before then, I think we'll probably have like a 5.1 or something out as well. We're all making it up as we go with the naming, and so it'll probably be a while before 6 though. Got it.
So yeah, our time is running out, so we have to wrap up. Thank you for sharing lots of good insights and also your perspective. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.